G'day, it's Katrine. I wanted to take just a moment of your time just to talk to you about the Session Regulator. This is a little device that I've put together based on many years of having to manage fairly tricky sessions when children would be quite self-directed in their activities, and I'd have to keep working to re-rail them back onto task. And I'm sure many of you have got students who are continuously deciding they're going to go off and do their own thing, or they're going to get distracted or look at other things or change the topic or abscond from therapy, whatever that is, during your sessions. So I went through many years of writing these little tricks onto notepads next to their session to just keep them in the session. It was a tool to just keep them going or keep them motivated or keep them stepping forward into the session. And then eventually I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put this into my art program and I'm going to build it once and do a good job of it, and I can then keep putting it through the printer and be able to build these for other families so they can also get the benefit of this. And I can tell you, it works a treat. It's so fantastic. When I forget to get it out at the beginning of the sessions, you know, I really kick myself because I realize, that's right, this is the one that gets off track. So I can't tell you how much it works. So let me go through and explain to you what it is. So this is really useful for children who are definitely on the spectrum, who have autistic spectrum traits, where one of those traits of being on the spectrum is being self-directed. And self-directed means that you come up with your own idea and it's, oh, this is a much better thing to do. I'm just going to go off and veer off and do this thing that's come into my mind. Part of the reason they do that is because they don't realize the importance of the thing that we're doing. They see their world from their perspective, not from our perspective as the teacher. And they can often also be lured into something different than we're wanting to teach because it could be their special interest or their fixed interest. And that's something that we do know happens for children who are on the spectrum. They have something that they're particularly keen about or they're really interested about, and that can be for a long period of time, if not lifelong. So we have to really find out what these things are and work to support the children to understand how this is having an impact on their learning, but also be able to help to sculpt capacity in that interest area. So there's some of the reasons kids can get off track. Others are inattentive, others are they're unfiltered focused kids, so basically all the sensory information is coming at once and they don't know which part to attend to first. So one of the first things to take notice of in the Session Regulator is this part here. Now this is designed to support the flow of the sessions. So children on the spectrum will often need to know what the flow of the session's going to look like, because they walk into a session and they don't know if the task is going to take 20 minutes or if it's going to take 5, if it's going to take 60 minutes, but they just know that could feel like a really long period of time, and that could actually trigger a meltdown. So when they've got a better idea of what's provided to them and a clear visual schedule of what that is, it brings about a lot more calmness. So the first thing is what we can do is inside these sections here, you can stick a picture or write. I can sometimes just write because my children might be literate, and I'll just write in the activity that we're planning to do. So for example, it might be a reading activity, which might be a tutor system. It might be a specific irregular verb app, or whatever the goal is that we're actually working on, we can write it in there. Okay, for any age, this is why it's really cool, because it's any activity at any age. And then as you can see, I'm using some sequential language here. First, I will do. Then, secondly, I will do. So introduction of the concept then. So first and then. Then finally, I will do. So we're using these words to signify the sequence and the flow of events that can help also with children's early narrative skills. So When the task is finished, this will close, and it does Velcro, okay, when it's closed, and we're finished. Okay, that can then be where they're issued with their reward as they're moving through the tasks. Now that third task, that might be actually the thing that they select, the thing that's most motivating for them to do. Okay, so this is regulating the flow of the activities. Okay, now here, this is to do with management of their time wastage, because what it is, I think one of the most vital things for these children is to get a metacognitive, or an understanding of their thinking and their thinking processes, an understanding of how their learning challenges are, or how their psychological challenges are impacting on their learning. So some children are just unaware that they're actually wasting time in the session, and then it's been an ineffective use of their sessions. So what I do is, for children who are aware of the clock, I will bring in that there's sort of a permissible yellow area here. And then what happens is, if I find that they're off track, I will then, just using a marker, a black marker or so that you can wipe off, I will just then draw a line to indicate we've lost a minute, or we might have lost 5 minutes, and then I'll educate them on that and say, well, you've lost a minute, and if that black grows further than the yellow, I win the session. And then I'll often have negotiated at the beginning of the session that whatever that thing you're working for will be removed if you don't, if you've lost all your time. So there is a slightly darker yellow here. You may not quite see it on the video, but that can be used for then becoming more strict with that time schedule. Okay, now and it really works. It's like when I'm using the schedule, I just have to even grab the pen and start just writing a minute, and then all of a sudden they'll like, oh, back it off, and they'll get back to task. So, you know, sometimes it's just the prompt we're needing, and it changes it to be more like a game and less like a nag. You know, can you get back on task? Can you get back on task? Can you get back on task? Don't forget to get back on task. And so after a while, that can be really wearing thin for children who have challenges with behavioural and psychological management, that they're not quite aware sometimes that they're doing this. So I think it's a much more positive way of interacting with them whilst they're learning these skills. Because remember, they are impairments and they are learning these skills. It's not necessarily because they're naughty or they're trying to get off track. They're actually learning how to re-rail themselves. They're learning how to keep on track themselves, just like another student might be learning how to coordinate their body to walk, or another is coordinate their fingers to write. These children are actually learning how to organize their thought processes so that they can actually remain in an interaction or remaining in a learning task. So just be really mindful of that when we're working with children who might be on the spectrum. Now, this one here on the back, this is about teaching them about the function of derailing and re-railing, as I mentioned earlier. So some students are unaware that when they're doing a lesson that they actually will talk off task. They're unaware that we're in the middle of doing a lesson and then they'll break into song about something that happened on the weekend. They went to the beach or something like that. And whilst it's really nice to have a chat and it's lovely to get to know each other and etc. in the session, it is still chipping away at the time that we could be working on the task. And for some particular individuals on the spectrum, they can grow up not even knowing this, and then that becomes a workplace and they're chewing away at time, and they could be focusing on activities in the workplace, and then they're getting behind with their assignments and etc. So this is about teaching them to have the discipline to keep on track, and it's also teaching about it's teaching them the ability to know when they are off track and when they're on track within the context of what they're talking about. So it's not only when they break and that they are breaking, but it's also about the semantics of the topic or the task that they're breaking. So for example, if a child in the middle of a lesson asked me a question out of the blue that had nothing to do with the lesson, I would then colour in one of these off-task balls. I'd say, oh, gee whiz, you know, that was a question that was to do with the beach. But today what we're learning about is the Bossy E rule. And that's not to do with the Bossy E rule. So because you were talking in the lesson today, and this is a boundary of our lesson and the door's shut, just because you're talking in, we're talking about the Bossy E rule and we're not talking about the beach, I'm going to have to draw one of these. And they learn very quickly. It's a really cool tool. And if, for example, that same student asked me a question about their learning, asked a certain question about something specific to their learning, I would actually reinforce that and say, you know what, that was such a good interaction because it was actually to do with your learning. So I'm going to colour in some train track because you've been keeping on track. Okay, so it's really up to us to be very vigilant and very aware of when they are on track, because what we tend to do is we tend to be picking the bits when they're like, you're off track, you're off track, you're off track. Hey, get back to track, get back to track. But we're not actually focusing when they're doing something good. It's just, you know, how you are as parents and teachers, and you notice that when they're not doing good things rather than reinforcing continuously when they're doing something that is good. So that's what we've got to aim to do is notice that they're doing something good, such as, wow, that's so good. You have worked on your own for 5 minutes. I didn't need to help you at all. I walked out of the room, I came back in and your task was done. That is so fantastic. I'm going to give you 3 train track parts. Awesome work. And the aim of this game is their train track has to be in front of the balls where they're derailed, and at the end, if they do that, they win. Okay, so because you know, sometimes they may not actually get to end. That's okay, but what we want to do is teach them to have that discipline to keep on track rather than to derail. And these end up working as really great visual cues to keep that going up here, so that eventually they can transfer that skill into not requiring this, and then they can be observing themselves in an interaction with another person, for example, or in a lesson. But let's just say in an interaction with another person, they're observing themselves, not with this here, they don't need it anymore, they've carried that through, and then they're watching themselves cut in on someone or change the topic in the middle of an interaction and go, oh my goodness, I've just changed the topic, okay, I'll re-rail that conversation. Oh, you were talking about this, can we get back on track and talk? I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but you were talking about this. So they start to develop these skills not only in their learning context, but also in their interaction context. So they're sharpening and developing their pragmatic skills. Okay, so these are available for purchase if anyone does want them. They're $15 and come laminated and so on, but on the back also gives the instructions of how these are being used. Okay, so that's good. I hope you enjoy those. Please feel free to contact us at DIY Shop to get these.